Two stars out of Ole Miss have both made their way to the NFL after their dominance in college. So the question is, who's better? Before we ask the question of who is the best Mississippi man, I think we should go back in time to see how the two got to the NFL in the first place.
Wilson wants it all, deep ball, Metcalf got it! Touchdown Seattle!
Time starter from the start of the season. Taking a shot up top, touchdown Brown!
Out of Oxford, Mississippi, DK was a solid high school talent with over 3,300 receiving yards and 49 touchdowns in his high school career, so it makes sense why he was regarded as a top 20 wideout in his class. With such a status, DK gained interest from some notable schools in Auburn, Miami, and good Ole Miss. As a Mississippi talent, it makes sense why he decided to stay close from home. But what's funny is the fact that Oxford and University are right next to each other, so he probably drove farther for high school than he did to become an Ole Miss Rebel. At Ole Miss, DK appeared in only 2 games as a freshman, and still was able to put up 2 solid catches for 13 yards before a foot injury ended his season before it started. What's wild about those 2 catches is that they were both for touchdowns, which makes sense with DK's style of play.
Got a man out here, it's Metcalf, reaches up, makes the catch, touchdown, Seahawks!
With an underwhelming redshirt freshman season in the rear view, it was finally time for DK to actually do stuff. And in his first actual season, he had over 600 yards and 7 touchdowns, which is just a little bit more than his 13 yards the previous year. But nonetheless, there was definitely still room to grow for someone as talented as DK. So with a boatload of potential, DK looked to leave it all on the field and was playing great with over 550 yards and 7 touchdowns in his first 7 games until...
Not a good sign. DK Metcalf, and has 5 receiving touchdowns, is headed back to the Ole Miss locker room.
Yet another injury, this time to the neck, ended another season in disappointment. Although a very limited sample size of college football, DK figured that he showed the NFL that he had the talent to do his thing on the next level, and he was right.
2019 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select DK Metcalf.
Going into the draft, there wasn't insane hype surrounding the monster until a certain photo of him, and many forget his bud and AJ Brown, both looking like Greek gods. Although insanely jacked, there was still a ton of questions surrounding his game, especially pertaining to his route running. So even though he gained a great deal of attention, it makes sense why he went to the very last pick in the second round of Seattle, which is a little bit of a further trip than a 4-minute ride across the street to Ole Miss.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Well, it seems like the trip was worth it, as DK joined a team with one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Russell Wilson to create a dangerous offense along with Tyler Lockett and Chris Carson. With such a high-powered offense, it seemed like a practically perfect fit for someone with a playstyle like DK, and it really was. Although he didn't have a single year of 700 yards or more at Ole Miss, DK proved that he could produce with exactly 900 yards and 7 touchdowns as he established himself as one of the most exciting players in the NFL. After such a stellar rookie season, DK had finally found his place in Seattle and killed it the following year with over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. It's crazy how someone can have better stats in the NFL than college, but a guy like DK can do that stuff, and that's why he's special. Straight from Starkville, Mississippi was a 2-sport talent in AJ, who not only killed it on the football field, but also on the baseball diamond. After dominating as a senior with nearly 1,400 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns, not only did AJ just make the football All-American game, but also the baseball one. Crazy enough, AJ was only the second player to have ever done that outside of the stud and Kyler Murray. But anyways, AJ was a 4-star as well, and in fact the top 5 wideout in his class. So you could probably guess that he had some legit schools after him, like Alabama, Auburn, and Ole Miss. Although many would think Alabama would be a no-brainer, in order to get attention from the get-go and stay close to home, AJ committed to Ole Miss. Although in-state, the trip was a bit farther than DK's, but the 2-hour distance was much better than flying across the country to go to a school like Cal. No hate against Cal, by the way.
Dang! That's tough.
Funny enough, AJ not only made the Ole Miss team, but he also was drafted to the Padres, and although he would have been a professional, he decided to stick with football. As a freshman at Ole Miss, AJ was able to put up some solid stats with over 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. Funny enough, the same amount of touchdowns that DK got with only 2 catches. Nonetheless, AJ proved that he could produce early on, and then elevated his play going into his sophomore year with over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns, as he was awarded the Connerly Trophy for being the best college football player in the state of Mississippi. With such a stellar sophomore year behind him, AJ didn't have much room to grow as a junior, but his over 1,300 yards and 6 touchdowns was the cherry on top for a really solid few seasons at Ole Miss. Following 2 great years as a first-team All-SEC talent, it was time for him to make the jump to the next level and do his thing in the NFL.
The Tennessee Titans select A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Ole Miss.
Many forget that AJ was drafted a few picks ahead of DK, and it makes sense considering his insane production in his last 2 years at Ole Miss. Anyways, AJ was joining a team with a pretty underwhelming wide receiver unit that was lacking much depth at all, with Corey Davis somehow being a wide receiver 1. So just like DK, AJ was in a situation where he could dominate from the get-go, and his over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns was pretty dang good for a rookie in the same offense as a workhorse in Derrick Henry. Now that he had already established himself as an elite talent early on, in his second year the expectations were super high, and somehow AJ matched them with over 1,000 yards in 14 games, but sadly knee injuries kept him out of the remaining 2. Although he wasn't able to top his freshman production, 1,000 yards is solid and seemingly a baseline for someone as talented as AJ. When looking at the two, they have a similar build and play style that takes advantage of their size as they just bully defenders. Even with both producing around the same numbers, DK has received way more attention due to his physique and the fact that he ran pretty fast on a track. So because of the greater focus on DK, many forget just how good AJ is, and that's why I made the video in the first place. AJ isn't just good, he is great. And now that him and Julio are in the same offense, he'll be able to get much more media attention. And although he might not get the lion's share of the offense, his production alone is just off the charts. Now this isn't to discredit DK in any way, as I think him and AJ are on a very similar level. It's just the fact that AJ is not treated as such that makes me want to favor him. With biases aside, it's important to look at the production of each of them and how much they really help each team. When comparing the production, AJ outproduces DK with 3.72 points per touch compared to DK's 3.21, and upon that is able to get more yards per catch with 17.4 compared to DK's 15.6. These stats prove that when you're both given the same sample size, that AJ just produces much better. Upon that, you have to factor in that DK has a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson, as opposed to a solid talent in Ryan Tannehill for AJ. Anyways, it seems like AJ has a slight edge, but you gotta understand for the future that Julio will take up a great deal of the offense in Tennessee, and he will likely become the wide receiver number 1, unlike Tyler Lockett in Seattle. So even though I have AJ with the edge, his stats on paper for the immediate future might look much less than DK. Anyways, I have AJ Brown with a slight edge in the victory, but I want to hear who you guys would rather have in the comments down below. AJ Brown and DK are only beginning their domination in a league that is just not ready for the Mississippi men.
There's a receiver open, right out of the gate, NWO, a TD.
On time, catch and run, AJ Brown is a blur. Touchdown, Titans!
Thanks for watching another Versus video. If you enjoyed, it would be awesome if you could subscribe, like, and comment down below what videos you want next. But anyways, see you guys soon and peace out.